I'm live. How's everybody doing on this Friday? We'll wait to get a few people in here to start this live stream, but today I'm going to be answering your guys' questions about nutrition, about the app. If you guys have questions about even training related, if you want, anything that's related to the app somewhat, we can talk about today. So we're going to get some people in here. It looks like we're getting quite a few on Instagram. Facebook, YouTube is dragging a little bit, but we'll get some more over there. If you guys have questions, best place to put them is if you're on Facebook or YouTube, put them in the box there, the comments. If you're on Instagram, if you do one of the question, if you can ask a question, then I can pull it up in the question box thing. That would be ideal because if you ask questions just in the comments, it scrolls so fast that I might miss all the questions. Yeah, best place to put it. Question box thing. Looks like we have one already. So Feed My Health, can you tell me more about how to do a recomp? Recomping is something that can only work in certain scenarios. And if you are not in one of those scenarios, you're likely just going to end up spinning your wheels and make no progress. So the scenarios where a recomp can actually work and you can lose fat and build muscle at the same time and not really change your weight, the scenarios where that can happen are if you are coming off of a long layoff of training and you lost muscle mass. If you are a rank beginner, like you literally have never touched a weight in your life and you start weight training, that's another scenario where you might be able to recomp. If you have always eaten like a low protein diet and then you're all of a sudden switched to a high protein diet, that's another case where when it's paired with like weight training is where you might actually see some recomp. But those are really the main scenarios where you are going to be able to recomp. And then everybody else, really they should focus on, if you want to lose body fat, you got to lose body weight. And so when you lose body weight, some of that is going to be muscle, some of that is going to be body fat. You can kind of shift the proportion more to body fat by doing certain things, like dieting slower, like eating a high protein diet. These are things that you can do to help shift that over to more fat loss. But yeah, trying to recomp, that usually is not a good goal. And whenever I hear people say that they want to do a recomp, I basically am assuming they're going to make no progress because that's usually the case with somebody that tries to do a recomp and isn't in one of those scenarios. So hopefully that helps. How important is protein distribution among meals for someone in a deficit? Protein distribution can actually be pretty important. It's not like as high of a priority as, let's say, making sure you're eating the right amount of calories for your goal and for your body, eating the right amount of protein overall for the whole day. But once you have those things kind of tackled, then I would focus on making sure you're distributing that protein pretty evenly throughout the day. So anywhere from like 3 to 5 protein-rich meals per day, I find is a pretty optimal range to be in. If you're outside of that range, you might benefit from getting inside of that range with your protein-rich meals. So it can be pretty important, and I wouldn't say it's something that's going to prevent you from losing body fat or anything like that. It's not that drastic of a change, but if you're trying to optimize everything in terms of your if you're trying to optimize everything in terms of your fat loss, protein distribution is something I would focus on. And what I like to do is I like to build all my meals around a protein source. So if I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to eat for the meal, I'm first going to think about, okay, what's my protein source? And then I build the rest of the meal around that. A lot of people just kind of wing it and go throughout the day. And then by the end of the day, they realize, I'm way behind on protein. I have to eat like 60 grams of protein just to hit my target for the day. And then they're trying to stuff their face with chicken at night and it's just not ideal. So if you can stay up with it and every single meal, making sure you're getting a high quality protein source. And I like to set for myself like meal protein targets. Now the app doesn't do that because that kind of just takes things a step further. And some people need to first focus on actually being able to hit their macro targets. But I like to set for myself meal protein targets where I will make sure I at least get 40 grams of protein in every single meal. And then that makes sure that I'm not behind at any point in the day and I can easily hit my target by the end of the day. So the more you can kind of plan ahead and be one step ahead of your macros, the better off you'll be. I feel like I'm eating so much food and calories while in fat loss. That's great. That's an awesome problem to have. All right, let's hop back over to Facebook, YouTube. Okay, so hi Keith, I've been using carbon for 2 weeks at maintenance. I'm noticing strength and muscle definition. Is it possible or placebo? So if you weren't training very hard before and then you start training hard, you are going to notice strength improvements. And then the muscle definition might just be just your muscles are a little more swollen because of the muscle damage that's happening. So they feel bigger. And if they feel bigger and there's more swelling inside of them, it might feel and look like you have more definition. So that could be what's happening. But building like an appreciable amount of muscle in 2 weeks is not going to happen. It takes a lot longer than 2 weeks to actually put on muscle tissue. So I would say a lot of it's placebo, and you probably have been coming off of time when you haven't really trained much. And so that is one of those scenarios where I'm saying recomping can be a possibility for somebody like that. Okay. Let's see. When will the app show how much fiber you intake from your food? It does actually. So if you go to the diary and near the top where your macro targets are, there's a little eye. If you hit that eye icon, that pulls up a summary for your whole day, shows you your macros, your micros, fiber, all that stuff. So you can kind of see the sum of your day right there. So that's where you do that. All right. So if I want hypertrophy, which is muscle gain, for those that don't know what hypertrophy means, from carbon, reverse diet or gain weight. It depends. So the main goal of a reverse diet and the reverse diet setting is to improve your metabolism. So that's the goal first and foremost with that setting. Now you can build muscle on that setting, no problem, because what that setting is doing, it's keeping you in a very, very slight surplus at all times, and it's kind of trying to push your body's maintenance calories up by not being in a huge deficit or a huge surplus or too big of a surplus. It's a very, very small surplus that your body will likely speed up its own metabolic rate to compensate and adapt to that. So that's really what the reverse diet setting is. Now, if you are a person that wants to do more of a lean gaining phase where you don't gain much weight or body fat, but you want to make sure you're trying to optimize things in the gym, reverse diet setting can work good for that. If you actually want your weight to go up every single week or at the rate that you have set, go with the weight gain setting. So if you want to gain weight, go with the weight gain setting. If you don't necessarily want to be forced to gain weight each week, but you will likely still gain weight over time, reverse diet setting would be the way to go. Oh, Zadia, I'm glad to see you on here. All right. When you're first starting the app and already are on a diet, will there be an issue calculating maintenance calories? So if you haven't started yet and you are going to use carbon, there is actually a place where you can put in your own maintenance calories. So if you've worked out what your maintenance calories are for your diet right now, you can enter that, and then the app will take over from those maintenance calories. And you might not be able to get the exact macros that you're on currently. It just depends on how they're split up, but the app is very flexible in the diet preference. So you can be anywhere from like keto all the way to super high carb type diet with carbon. So there are multiple diet preferences you can pick, and so hopefully with being able to set your own maintenance calories for the calculation and using that diet preference, you can get the starting macros that you want. All right. Reverse or maintain for a lean gain goal. I kind of spoke on that. I would do a reverse probably. Okay. Curtis, thank you for joining Carbon. He's a new Carbon member, started yesterday. How accurate is the body fat estimate using the waist measurement you gave? So it's not super accurate, but it's also not the end of the world if it's not super accurate, because we just need a estimate of where your body fat is, just kind of a ballpark number to get you started. So the metabolism calculation that we use to figure out where is best for you to start needs a body fat percentage entered. And so if you enter, if you know your body fat, definitely enter that. So like if you've had it tested, enter that when you're creating the goal. But it sounds like you don't necessarily know your body fat percentage, so you entered your waist measurement. Yeah, it's not going to be super accurate. It's just a kind of a rough figure. So if you want it to be more accurate, you're going to have to get it tested. But after a few weeks, it's not going to matter anyway what you entered in initially, because the coach is going to take over through your weekly check-ins and figure out exactly where you need to eat to make progress at the rate that you have set. So let's say it started you out 300 calories too high, which it probably isn't going to start you that far away. But let's say it does. Each week you're going to check into the coach. It's going to look at, okay, how much progress did you make? What is the rate that you said you wanted to make each week? How far off are you? Then it kind of figures out, okay, you ate this much, and this is what the outcome should be. This is what the outcome was. Figures out the difference between those and figures out, okay, this is the adjustment that needs to happen to get you to where you need to be. So after your first or second week, it's likely going to dial you into where you need to be eating anyway. So the really important thing is being patient with the coach. A lot of people get started and then their first check-in, and then they're already like, oh, it's not working, I give up. Like, you need patience. If you can't give something a month of investment in time to be able to let the app do its thing, you're probably never going to make progress towards your goals. And I'm not saying that's you at all, Curtis. You're welcome, man. Or if it's Craig or Curtis, I don't know. But you're welcome. And this isn't to you. This is just generally speaking about people that I see sometimes using the app. Like, they can't even put in patience is the name of the game. Yep. And they can't even put in like 3 weeks of time to see this through, to see if it's going to be a solution for them. And for the people that can have patience and can commit to something for that amount of time, they see the progress that they want to see, and then they get more motivated. So you need to put in that initial investment, that initial buy-in, and hopefully based on like Lane, Holly, and my background, like, you understand that this is based on science. This is a proven system, and you should put your trust in it. And once you do, then you kind of see the magic of the coach taking over. So yeah, so that's that. Thanks for the question, Curtis or Craig. Can I do calorie cycling while I'm maintaining weight, like day on surplus, another day deficit. Yeah, absolutely. So we have a feature in the app called the Calorie Planner, and it basically is like your weekly budget. So the coach is going to give you macro targets, and these are going to be like your average macro targets that they want you to see, or that it wants you to hit by the end of the week. So however you distribute those calories throughout the week doesn't really matter, as long as you're getting in daily protein. So if you're using the calorie planner feature, it makes sure that you have the right protein target every day. So what you can do is you can adjust, the weekdays if you want to be more in a deficit, but then weekends you might want to be in a surplus. But overall, you're at maintenance level, which the coach has set. So yeah, you can definitely calorie cycle. What's calorie cycling? You asked the question. um, but yeah, calorie cycling is just cycling your calories, having different amounts of calories each day. And that isn't necessarily going to provide you more results or anything like that. It's just a way to fit this into your lifestyle better. So we want it to be as easy as possible to fit carbon into your lifestyle. So we give tools like the calorie planner. We give a lot of flexibility in terms of diet preference. You can, have high carb, low carb, whatever fits your lifestyle best. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question there. Back to Facebook, YouTube. All right, I've got quite a few here. I gotta scroll up a little bit. Sorry, I'm just trying to see here. So Michael asked, do I have to change anything on the app if I increase my cardio and weightlifting while on fat loss phase? So how you increase your activity is completely up to you. And what the coach does is it kind of makes up the difference. So let's say you increase your cardio and you burn more calories this week, and that means you're going to maybe lose a little bit more weight. The coach is going to sense that because it's looking at the progress that you made, the progress that you want to make, and then it's adjusting the calories until the progress that you made and the progress that you want to make are like right in line with each other. So it doesn't really matter how you increase your activity or training, the app is going to make up the difference. And as long as it's not like a huge, crazy, significant change, like let's say you go from being a couch potato to being like a Olympic athlete or something like that, like the app is going to have a very hard time picking up on that. Over time, it will get you to where you need to be, but it might be off for a few weeks. But in the case of going from training, 3 days a week and switch to 5 days a week, or increasing cardio, like adding a session, the app is going to be able to pick up on that pretty easily week to week. So that's why you don't have to do anything special or change anything in the app. It makes up that difference. So hopefully that makes sense, Michael. Week 2 with this app, so far so good. Glad to hear. Thank you for joining. When using meal replacement shakes, 2 or more a day to fulfill my high protein requirements, do I have to worry about vitamin overload? The shakes are fortified. Depends. If you're just having 2, very unlikely that you're going to have to worry about any vitamin overload. But it all depends on the shake that you bought and then how much it has in it. But I would say you're pretty safe with 2 a day. It's probably not a problem. But if you really need to have 2 shakes every single day just to hit your protein targets, either you have too high of protein targets for some reason, like let's say you put in that you have a lot more lean body mass and the app says you need more protein, or you went and adjusted the protein slider in settings and you're just too high in protein. But in either of those, you can fix that easily by adjusting the protein slider down. But if you are still also needing to include 2 protein shakes every single day, it sounds like maybe all the other foods in your diet are really low protein. So I would really focus on looking at the foods that you're eating and making sure that you're eating plenty of high protein foods. Because yeah, having 2 shakes a day, it's not necessarily a problem from a health standpoint, but that can get very expensive. And also, like, there are other things in the foods other things in the high protein foods that you eat that are important as well. So just living on protein shakes is probably not the best idea. Mm, um, do you have any advice for estimating calories for meals in restaurants or whenever you can't weigh it or whatever? So yeah, a lot of us are trying to fit this into our lifestyles. We might go out to eat, and we might have social situations where we're not going to be able to weigh foods out and know exactly what we're eating, but that isn't going to stop you from making progress. And the best thing that you can do is just estimate as best you can. So if you're at a restaurant and let's say they don't have um, nutrition information posted online, which nowadays, like, almost all of them have nutrition information that you can find. You just have to search on their website or Google, you'll be able to find it. But if, let's say, you can't find the restaurant's nutrition information, what you can do is think of a competitor that has a very similar product, similar meal or whatever, and search for the nutrition information for that, and then track it like that. That's another way that you can make sure you're estimating things well. You can also kind of break up the meal into its individual components, like in your mind. So, like, look at, okay, this has this much chicken. So, like a fist of chicken, let's say, oh, it's about this big. That's about 4 ounces of meat. So then you can track that as 4 ounces of chicken. And then, oh, there's this much rice. So you estimate, oh, that's about a cup of rice. You estimate that. And so breaking it into its individual components can be a lot easier to estimate the overall meal instead of just trying to guess, like, the macros for the whole meal. So breaking it up like that mentally and in the tracker is probably a good idea. Let's see, what else can you do? One thing, I would make sure that you overestimate. So if you're unsure, usually it's best to err on the side of caution and overestimate the calories and the macros. I like to, what I think it is, I like to add 10% because usually there's a lot of hidden fats and oils and stuff which can really add the calories. So overestimating is usually a good idea. And yeah, so those should be some good tips to help get you started. Overall, if you're eating out, like, let's say, every single day, that's going to make losing weight, reaching your goals a little bit more difficult just because of that error in the tracking. So if you're noticing that you're not making the progress that you want and you're eating out every single day, that's something I would first look at and be like, okay, I'm just going to test this hypothesis here, and I'm going to cook all of my meals at home. I'm going to weigh everything out at my current macros and see if I can make progress. And you do it that way, and then boom, all of a sudden you make progress. Then okay, I was estimating things wrong in the restaurant. So a lot of people think they're eating a certain amount of calories when they're actually not. So, like, you see all the time where people say, oh, I'm eating 1,200 calories a day, I can't lose weight. And then you ask them, well, how many times are you eating out? And then what are you getting? And you kind of go down the rabbit hole and you hear, oh, they're eating out 3 to 4 times a week. They're estimating the macros. These are things that can really prevent you from making progress because you are eating more than you actually think you are. So be honest with yourself and estimate the best you can. If you're not making the progress you want, make some changes. All right, let's see. Thank you, Nicholas. Great app, easy to use and love it. Do you plan to have a feature to share and copy recipes? Copy would be helpful for duplicating recipes that are very similar. Example, I have a recipe with chicken breast and the same one with chicken thighs would be nice. to be able to copy and swap out that one ingredient. Thank you for the comment and the suggestion. Being able to copy and share meals and foods and stuff is something that we definitely want to introduce into the app in the future. We have some higher priority things that we're working through at the moment, but those are features that I would say are more towards the top of our list of things we want to do, because we see that they would be pretty helpful for a lot of people. But right now, unfortunately, for your example, yeah, you got to just create the recipe twice, unfortunately. But once you have it, it's built and saved into your system so that you don't have to make that recipe every single time. But I totally see how sharing and copying would be helpful. When changing to reverse, the app lowers protein macro. I have room to move the slider up in protein, but does that negatively affect the reverse since it lowered it? So Steve, the reason why the app lowered your protein target is because you're no longer in a deficit. So I'm assuming you were in a deficit before this reverse diet. So if you're in a deficit, you're going to require more protein to help retain your lean body mass. And when you're in a surplus, you don't necessarily need as much protein because you're in a surplus of calories. It isn't looking for the energy, and it's not going to be pulling it from your muscles. So that is why the app is lowering your protein. So you are totally safe leaving it where the app has recommended you. But let's say you just prefer more, or you want to be 1,000,000% safe and make sure you're covered. You can always up that protein if you want. So moving the slider up isn't going to negatively affect the reverse diet, because the amount that you can increase it isn't going to be so much that it's going to offset your carbs like a crazy amount. Yeah, if you increase your protein, it is going to take some calories away from carbs and fats, but it's going to be negligible. And then as you check in and reverse diet, you're likely going to be getting increases in those carbs and fats, so it's probably not a big deal. So if you want more protein, definitely increase it with the protein slider. Once I'm done with fat loss phase and want to slowly go back to maintenance with minimal fat gain, what goal should I pick? So in your question here, there's something that doesn't make sense. So if you go to maintenance, you are not going to gain any fat. By definition, maintenance is going to help you maintain your weight and your body fat or whatever. You're not going to gain weight if you're eating at maintenance. So slowly going back to maintenance is just prolonging the deficit, which is not something I recommend doing. And a lot of people wonder, why does the reverse diet setting take you to maintenance right after your diet? They're afraid they're going to gain weight, but they're not going to, because it's going to maintenance. And the difference here is people think maintenance is like this one value that never changes over time, is completely static, but maintenance is changing every single day. And especially over the course of diets, over reverse diets, all these types of things have effects on your metabolism and your maintenance calories. So your pre-diet maintenance, let's say you used to be able to maintain on 2,000 calories a day, and now you dieted, and towards the end of your diet, your rate of loss is slowing down basically to nothing, and you're eating, let's say 1,500 calories a day. If your weight isn't really changing that much and you're eating 1,500 calories a day, your new maintenance, your newly estimated maintenance is close to that 1,500 calorie mark. It's not that 2,000 anymore. So there's no need to slowly ramp back up to that old maintenance value. Just have the app take over from your current estimated maintenance by switching over to a reverse diet goal. And if you don't want to gain any weight, make sure you don't do a calorie boost when you start the reverse diet. So that's what I would do. All right, back to Instagram. Can you help me with exercise? What's the best way to resistance train? Heavy with little reps or lighter with more reps? Should you do 7 days a week or less? Should you do different muscle groups every day? Or can you not mix it up as much? This is for fat loss. Okay, so there's a lot to unpack here. So what are you currently doing? That's what is most important here, is what knowing what you're currently doing, because you don't need to completely change everything overnight. Because let's say you aren't doing any weight training right now. If you start weight training, even just 2 days a week, you're going to notice improvements from that. So there's no need to go from 0 days of training all the way to 7. You know, people very rarely are going to need 7 days a week of like weight training. You know, I usually tend to max out at like 6 days a week of weight training, because having that single recovery day can be beneficial. Now there are ways to split up your training where you can train 7 days a week and not necessarily overtrain. It's all of how you set up your training. Now with your question about how should you resistance train, heavy and little reps or lighter with more reps, both. Honestly, all rep ranges have their benefits. So having a program that incorporates a variety of rep ranges is going to be better than just picking one rep range and sticking with that. Now, you don't have to do a bunch of crazy things and try to confuse your muscle, because your muscles don't get confused. It's not like this isn't Beachbody or whatever. It's muscle confusion is not a thing. You're just not adapted to certain training. So like training to confuse your muscle and just get sore is a good way to make you feel like you're making progress, but then actually not making progress over time, because you're changing things way too much. The way that you can make progress over time is if you are, if you have a solid weight training program, you're consistent with it, you get stronger on the exercises in all rep ranges, and yeah, you're just consistent to that over time. That's the best way you're going to end up making progress. If you're constantly switching things up, that's a recipe for making no progress. Now, when you say this is for fat loss, that gives me the false perception that you think there's a certain weight training program for fat loss, there's a certain weight training program for muscle gain. That's a misconception that, yeah, it's not true. So fat loss comes down to creating a calorie deficit and making sure that you are holding on to muscle. So your weight training workout should not be looked at as a way to burn calories. Because if that's your outcome, if that's your goal with your workout, you're also not going to really make any weight training progress, because you're just focused on burning calories. You want the weight training to be focused on building and maintaining muscle. That's the ideal scenario, is that's what you want to focus on. So whatever gives you that outcome is what should be what you focus on for training. For fat loss, like I said, create a calorie deficit, which carbon can help you with, and sustain that calorie deficit. So over time, as your metabolism slows down, you're going to want to make adjustments, which the coach does. A thing that you can include for fat loss is cardio. So that's something I would focus on if you are trying to lose fat, is being more active through your activity level, through cardio. Those are all going to be beneficial for fat loss, but do not look for a fat burning workout. That's just going to be a suboptimal workout program, in my opinion. Focus on lifting in a variety of rep ranges, using an adequate amount of volume for what you need. So what can you make progress on in terms of strength over time? Don't overdo it. Plan in some times where you can rest. So like have a few rest days a week if you need them. Have maybe a deload after a certain amount of weeks, if you're getting beat up from your training. So yeah, there's so much to unpack in terms of training, but hopefully that rambling gives you some information that was helpful. Right. Can you build muscle in a deficit? Yeah, you can build a muscle in a deficit. Now, this also goes back to like recomping. So there's certain scenarios where it's more likely that you're going to be able to build muscle in a deficit, and then there's certain scenarios where it's very unlikely you're going to. So the more advanced you are with your training, like let's say you've been training for 5-10 years in the gym consistently, it's going to be very, very unlikely, almost impossible probably, to build any significant amount of muscle if you're in a calorie deficit. So that's where you might want to focus on having phases of focusing on gaining weight, building muscle, building as much muscle as possible, because that takes a lot of work the more time you've been at it. So, in your first week, in your first year, you're going to probably gain, maybe 50 to 75% of all the muscle that you're going to ever gain in your whole life. Like, it is significantly more in the first year of training if you're following a consistent program and you're working out hard. After that, after like 1 to 2 years, it's going to be very unlikely you're going to build muscle in a deficit. But if you're a newbie to training, you can probably likely build muscle in a deficit. If you're very overweight, you are more likely to build muscle in a deficit. And then if also you're taking drugs or something like that, but let's not talk about that. So yeah, very unlikely, but can happen in certain scenarios. Would you do a deload and a diet break together? You can, yeah, sure. Any reputable resources to learn about systemic inflammation? Field seems loaded with hucksters. Probably not. It's all just hucksters, like you said. There's really no reason, unless you have like a health condition that causes you to have systemic inflammation. There's really no reason to even consider, worry, think about any of that. On week 4 of reverse, losing weight and still kind of tired, will the coach eventually provide bigger weekly increases? So if you lose weight on the reverse diet setting, it's going to give you a bigger than normal increase in your calories. But if you are within the tolerance range that you have set for the reverse diet, it's going to give you kind of more of a default type adjustment, which is based on your current macros and that kind of thing. So it sounds like maybe you either chose too low of an allowable weight gain on that, or you you probably just chose too low of a allowable weight gain. So maybe you want to increase that tolerance to a higher one, which will then give you more likely get adjustments, because if you don't gain much weight, or if you don't gain too much weight, it's going to make an adjustment. So you're just kind of opening up that range. So if you're tired, you could also do a calorie boost. That's one thing that can help if you want to get out of that initial deficit and just get back to feeling normal again. Doing a calorie boost can help. You can do a 10% or a 20% increase if you want. And now with that, it's going to come more chance of body fat gain. So it depends on how comfortable you are with gaining body fat. If you are trying to stay super lean, you might end up being a little bit more hungry for a little bit longer until your calories get up high enough. Does it make a difference if the fat intake in a calorie deficit is 60 to 80 grams instead of 110 to 120 in a balanced diet setting, in order to make sure fat is minimally stored? So there is the macro targets that you're eating, like the split of them. So how your protein, carbs, and fats are distributed across your calorie needs. It's your calorie needs is what is dictating deficit, surplus, maintenance. So if you're in a deficit and you're on keto or something like that, for example, you're not going to store body fat still, even if you have a ton of fat in your diet. It's because the overall calories of your diet are still putting you in a deficit. So your dietary fat doesn't necessarily turn into body fat. It's only when you're in a calorie surplus that extra energy from your carbs and fats are going to be put into body fat. So if you are in a deficit and you're eating a ton of fat, your body is just going to get more adapted to using fat as a fuel because it's burning that off to make up that calorie deficit. So yeah, don't worry about the diet preference, the sliders, where they're at. If you're within the tolerances that we have set in the app, you have nothing to worry about. So you should be fine there. But let's say, 100 to 110 to 120 grams of fat is kind of high. So you do need to make sure that you are eating still plenty of healthy foods, and getting enough fiber in your diet, and you're not void of fiber. You still want to make sure you're getting in those healthier foods. So don't just eat like 120 grams of saturated fat every single day. It's probably not a good idea for your health. So how you split up your macros is important for overall health in terms of the food choices that you're making. And I like to live by like the 80-20 rule. So like if 80% of my calories are coming from whole nutrient dense foods, the other 20% are more discretionary calories. I can spend them however I feel like, and I have no concerns in terms of health if I'm following kind of that 80-20 or sometimes even 90-10. It just depends on the phase I'm in. So like if I'm in a deficit fat loss phase, calories are lower, I don't necessarily want to spend 20% of my calories on more discretionary foods. I want foods that are going to fill me if I'm in a deficit. So maybe I'll shift that more to 90% whole foods and then 10% discretionary calories. So yeah, that's something that can change over time depending on your lifestyle and what your goals are, what your diet is, and that kind of thing. So but overall, don't worry about eating a little more fat and then it being stored as long as you're in a deficit. All right, I gotta get back to Facebook, YouTube here. Trisha, if you can check in early before you leave, that can be a good use of the ability to check in early. So I would probably check in early, get some new macros. If you want to go to maintenance for that week while you're gone, checking in and then changing your goal to maintenance is probably the best approach as well. I'm running the Chicago Marathon first time. Should I stick to maintenance? What's your goal? It just depends on what your goal is. Like if you, sounds like your goal is more performance based for your running. So sticking to maintenance is probably a good idea if that's the weight that you run the best at. Just depends on what your overall goal is in terms of changing your body composition or changing your weight. So carbon really is about changing your weight or increasing your metabolism or something like that. You obviously can maintain your weight if that's what you want to do. So maybe if you want to maintain until after the marathon, and then once the marathon's over, maybe you have a goal of losing weight, losing body fat, then you can use the app for that. So strong finish, yeah, you definitely don't want to be in a deficit if you want to finish strong for your marathon. So any of the settings, that aren't a deficit. So reverse diet, weight gain, or maintenance would all be good for you. It just depends on what can happen with your weight for the marathon. All right. I thought I heard at one time there's a place to input that time of month. Is it important for the macros that week? So when you check in, it asks you if you are close to that time of the month, and it's just a yes or no question. And depending on how you answer, the app will do something different. So, let's say, so what typically happens around this time is women tend to gain weight, anywhere from like 1 to 2 pounds all the way up to, I've seen anything like 8 to 10 pounds. It can be crazy sometimes. So the app has a really hard, so it's really impossible to know what your true weight is kind of during that check-in. So what the app does is it looks at, did you make enough progress for the rate that you have set? And if you didn't, it's probably more likely that it's just weight fluctuation and it's nothing to worry about. So then it usually keeps your macros the same. But there is a scenario where, let's say you lost too much weight and you're on that time of the month, like then it's very likely that the calories are so low that they need to be adjusted up. So the coach will adjust up in that scenario. But usually the coach is not going to adjust down in that scenario, just because of all the weight changes that tend to happen with that time of the month. So yeah, there is a place to enter that. And then there is a certain age where it's cut off and it doesn't ask you that during the check-in. But if you, let's say you are older, but you still get your period or something like that, and you want that option, you can always email support and they can re-enable it for you. But usually it's usually fine for people and it's in there. And yeah, so answer yes or no, and the coach will take over from there. So I'm only going to be live for another 13 minutes, Jolene. So if you have questions, make sure to ask them. All right. How much water do you recommend per day? Enough so that it's going to be different for everybody. So enough so that your pee is like clear to slightly yellow throughout the day. So drink enough to get that kind of hydration level, and then you should be fine. For me, it's like 2 of these big boys, and then I have maybe a few like LaCroix or something like that, and that usually is sufficient for me. But it depends on your activity level, how much you're sweating, how much muscle mass you have. There's a ton of factors. So the easiest way for people to gauge their hydration is just look at your pee. All right. So Daniel asking on Facebook, on checking day, should I log all my food for the day before checking in? So you don't have to use the food tracker that's built into Carbon to use the coach. So when you check in, the coach is going to ask you, were you compliant to the macro targets? And when you're checking in, it looks at your diary and it just shows you like green if you're in the range or not green if you're outside of the range. But that doesn't necessarily matter, because you still have to hit yes or no, you were compliant or not. So you don't have to log all your food into the tracker before checking in. But if you want to, then you can see if your average is within range when you're checking in. But you don't have to, completely up to you. The tracker and the coach are kind of decoupled because there are many people that maybe use MyFitnessPal for tracking or some other food tracking app, and they use Carbon for the auto adjusting macro targets, and then they enter that in there. Or there's people that just use Carbon as a food tracker, although that's really not the main feature or point of Carbon. It's the coach and the macro targets. But yeah, you don't have to use the tracker in Carbon if you don't want to. So why does it ask if compliant instead of automatic? 2 reasons. We didn't want it to just automatically look at your diary, because let's say you forget to track a single meal or food, it could throw off the whole coach. So we want to reduce the potential for user error, which if everything was just automatic, there's likely that, you know, the coach would do something and let's say it would say you were non-compliant even though you were, and you forgot to track a meal. Like, there's a ton of issues that can come about with that. Another reason, you know, if a lot of people don't necessarily use our food tracker, so if it's completely tied together, it's going to make that experience hard for people. And also just the fact of people being held to determine it for themselves can be an important aspect as well. So like, you physically saying, yes, I was compliant, or no, I wasn't, that can be kind of a reflection on your week. You know, it can be something that is good for you to say yes or no, you weren't compliant to. It can help people mentally sometimes. So yeah, there's a few reasons why it doesn't automatically build in, automatically look at compliance, but who knows, maybe in the future we'll figure out a way to make it do that and make it make sense for everybody. But for now, you have to say yes or no if you are compliant or not. My body fat is a little higher than I'd like right now, but want to build muscle. How can I do this while not getting too uncomfortable with body fat percentage? Should I cut first and then reverse? Yeah, probably. You're probably going to want to cut to a place where you're very comfortable with your body fat and you have headroom to gain weight and gain body fat in, because that's going to be the best. It's going to set you up the best for building muscle optimally, because you'll be able to be in a surplus for an extended period of time, because your body fat will still be within your comfortable range. And yeah, so I would personally lose body fat, get down to a lower level, and then build up from there and focus on gaining muscle. And yeah, you can do that with the reverse setting. Maybe start off right out of the deficit, maybe do reverse diet for a while. And then if you want to force yourself to gain weight each week, you can do the weight gain setting. If I'm changing my goal and my activity level might change for a particular week, should I completely change my setting? And will that keep all my maintenance in check, or will those change? So if you're changing your goal, and you are letting the app use your currently estimated maintenance, that is already taking into account your activity levels. But if your activity levels are going to change, you probably want to calculate new, and then enter your new activity levels when you create your goal. And anytime you create a goal, it is going to kind of start you over in terms of your maintenance calorie estimate. Now, if you are changing your goal and you're using your currently estimated maintenance, the app is going to carry that maintenance estimation over. But if you calculate new, it's going to kind of start you at this new level that's based on your new activity levels. So yeah, if your activity level is changing significantly, I would have the app calculate new and then enter your new activity level. If you create a food, does it show for everyone else also? No, it doesn't. Just it's all personal. So your foods that you favorite and create are all in your kind of personal database, and the global database that we have is not global in the terms of like you can find foods in Africa, but I mean, like, the database that's shared for all of our users is going to have that data in there, and we don't add to that database. We're just reading from that database. So whenever you create foods, it's kind of creating your personal database that the app is looking at. So no worries about people seeing your foods or anything like that. And also, like, with that said, like, there's no user generated food, so you can be more confident in the foods that you do find in the database, because they are likely more verified than like MyFitnessPal, for example. Like, user generated foods can be so inaccurate, and you have to really double check all the results. Whereas with Carbon, you can be more confident, in my opinion, of the results and the nutrition information because it's not user generated. Has anybody ever hit the calorie bottom floor? Yeah, absolutely. People definitely have. Usually what happens is they have a low amount of lean body mass and are dieting for a very long time and trying to lose too fast or something like that. There are scenarios where people can hit the calorie floor. It's pretty low, and like most people just can't tough it out to hit that. But there have been people that have hit the calorie floor for sure. Thank you for tuning in. Got a few more minutes here. Let's see, I can answer maybe a few more questions. If you had to fast for 24 hours, let's say religious reasons, how would you account for that in the app? Make it up later or take the week as a non-compliant? It depends. You could easily make up the rest of the week, make up the macros the rest of the week so that your weekly average macros are on track. The only difference is you will not be hitting your daily protein target. So that could potentially provide you with different results. But if it's religious reasons, like that, your results that week shouldn't matter. So you could just mark non-compliant and then move on. Recently started taking creatine and gained weight, probably water. I assume Carbon is going to lower my calories. What should I do? Yeah, so you set a goal rate of weight loss in the app, and the app is working to keep you in that range. So if you do something that causes you to gain a significant amount of weight, like starting to take creatine, which you didn't take before, that is going to throw the app off. But with that said, like, just be consistent, keep checking into the app, and it's going to adjust and make up for that and figure out where you need to actually be eating once that initial kind of weight gain from creatine goes away. So biggest thing I can tell you is just be consistent, keep checking in. Do you guys use the app for setting your own calories, or do you do your own with your knowledge? So our knowledge went into building this app. So to save us brain energy and stuff, we usually just let the app do it ourselves. Like Holly's using the app to coach her to worlds. Lane uses the app every single day, whether he's goal of fat loss, reverse dieting. We are all using the app daily. I'm personally using it right now to reverse diet and build muscle. So and get my metabolism back to normal. So we all use it every single day. And it's just so much easier to have that peace of mind and not have to worry about our progress and our adjustments and stuff. It's so much easier just to let the app take over and to just track, make sure you hit the macros, check in, get adjustments if needed, and just keep moving on so we can focus our energy on other things. Anyways, that is going to wrap it up. This thing is going to kick me off here in a few minutes. So appreciate all of you guys tuning in. We're very thankful to have you guys as members. And if you aren't a member, consider subscribing to Carbon Diet Coach. It's only $9.99 a month. And if you were to pay a nutrition coach or a macro coach to give you macros and adjust them every week, you likely pay 20 times as much or 20 to 30 times as much as what Carbon costs. So it's a very high value if you are the type of person that can follow a plan and just need a solid nutrition plan. And so yeah, check it out, Carbon Diet Coach. It's available on iOS and Android. We don't have a trial, unfortunately, but if you guys want to learn more about the app, see its features, you can go to joincarbon.com/help. That's our help center. There's a ton of videos there explaining the app, explaining the features. So that should give you a good idea of what you would be paying for if you do want to subscribe. And yeah, we appreciate everybody tuning in. Be sure to join the Facebook group if you're not in the Facebook group, because there are a ton of helpful posts every single day. Facebook group's great. Everybody in the group is awesome. So be sure to join the group. And thank you so much for everything. We'll see you guys. Hopefully everybody has a great weekend. And bye.